Now the oil and gas industry began a downfall, and new technologies are demanded by the nations. The powers that be are working to adapt us to what they consider to be the next era for humanity. Solar, wind, geothermic power, when for more than 100 years zero-point gravity, high-voltage vortexes to produce wireless power, the development of electrical magnetic fields to provide free energy to the poor countries and the whole world was always there, but it was not considered. But the problem is how to make these new old technologies profitable, how not to lose the influence and the grip that controlled our nations, the third world countries, the banking systems, the economies that have been the landmarks of democracy. Free trade must continue. Mining projects, oil and gas must carry on their extractive model at higher speeds than before, until the end of the century, if possible, as concluded by the G20 and the G7. 400 mining projects in Colombia, South America alone, where rivers have been illegally privatized, despite the reports of more than 5,000 children known to have died of thirst, dehydration, and hunger in the province of La Guajira, for example. All this because of the lack of water. These children are not able to make it on time to the health centers to be taken care of because they have to walk enormous distances through the desert to reach them. By the same token, more than half of the children that have died for inanition are not registered on the public record or civil record when they are born, so the government does not have real numbers on this matter. More than 30,000 children of the Guayú ethnicity suffer from malnutrition in this desert province. According to Armando Valbuena, a traditional authority of the Guayú people, who affirms that the number surpasses in reality 14,000 dead, and it's not stopping. Colombian literature Nobel Prize Gabriel Garcia Marquez and his work, such as Love in the Times of Cholera and 100 Years of Solitude, had Guayú lineage from his mother's side, and the influence of his culture is present in the big part of his work. The province of La Guajira is dying of starvation and thirst because its mother river has been dammed and its water privatized for the service of the agricultural industry and the exploitation of the biggest open coal mine in the world. The dimension of this tragedy has no precise numbers because the majority of the territory occupied by this nation of pre-Hispanic origin lacks effective provincial governmental presence. This is happening despite that La Guajira, with a population of 500,000 inhabitants during the last 20 years, have received over $1 billion in royalties for the extraction of its natural resources, agricultural, mainly coal and gas. That is not counting the money that is provided by the government every year as a part of the national budget, money that is stolen by the corruption which domains the public record administrations. The Guayú nation does not have access to water because the Rancheria River, the only one in the province, was dried out in its totality on the Guayú areas. And over its riverbed, today, only loading cars moved by animal force and automobiles transit it. This ethnicity lives in extreme poverty and lacking food, basic services as electricity, aqueducts, health, or education. With more than $1 billion in royalties, this community should be living like Switzerland does. This according to a report by Diana Lopez Zuleta from March 16, 2015, on the two shores. You should see here the river that they stole from us, a documentary by Gonzalo Guillén, El Río que nos robaron. Or see the Rancheria River Dam, according to the field reporter or Reportero del Pueblo, everything for the United States according to the report statement. The greed of the capitalistic ideals in democracies around the world are above government's presence and duties. You can see the protest in front of the American Congress by the people to take money away from politics. Just recently, as promised by Bernie Sanders, presidential candidate for the United States for 2016. Because money can bribe and ill any aesthetic moral conscience or democratic principle which is supposed to be the foundation of the republics. But back to South America, in the case of Colombia, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos recently came from Europe with greetings of the new foreign investments for a privatization of people's land, privatization of people's food and water, resources and rights, to be sold by him and his entourage of self-service corporate hypocrites to foreign interests. According to him, with the blessing of the Pope, whom he visited in the same promising economic development tour for the progress of Colombia. While the water is down and privatized, the Minister of Treasury is asking the people of Colombia to shower in 30 seconds. And they speak of peace. As you know, in Colombia, there is now a 3-year peace process in this country with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and possibly the National Liberation Army. But that's not all. The Magdalena River is the most important river in Colombia, and now it's at its lowest level in history. Its flow has changed dramatically. From 7,200 cubic meters per second, it's now less than 3,000. It seems you can cross the rivers in Colombia on foot nowadays. The logging industry is destroying vast areas of unique wood species, redwood and many others in El Chocó province. Until recently, one of the most diverse provinces of the world on bird species, trees, and biodiversity. Its population is submitted by poverty, ignorance, and violence, and immense areas are being devastated by foreign and domestic mining projects for now more than 525 years. Including the forest, indigenous leaders as Feliciano Valencia is condemned to 16 years in prison for punishing a policeman for breaking the law in their territory by whipping him. Well, their communities are being displaced, sprayed with forbidden fungicides, and opportunistic senators make a scandal for the displacement of 1,200 Colombians from Venezuela, when it's well known by the public that this senator, when he was president of the republic, left 3,600,000 displaced. 39,800 disappeared, 4,328 false positives according to the Daily Public and Diario Público, and has innumerable legal processes against him. More than 60 senators in Colombia, actually, are being processed legally. Many of them are in prison. No doubt, the possible conflict with Venezuela deserves all our attention because war can erupt anytime between the two countries, a very convenient factor for the interest of the multinationals and weapon sellers to increase the multidimensional poverty of this country and the countries in South America. In the meantime, all the riches, wealth, oil, water are being extracted at the highest pace possible, authorized, but the elite governments and foreign interests never by the people. In South America, there is no people's government at all. It's just elites' governments. Not to mention that 250 tons of mercury are being poured to the Colombian rivers by illegal mining only. The third country in the world to pollute its water with methyl mercury and arsenic. Fish, yogurts, crabs, all kinds of species living in these areas where the gold fever has exploded are contaminated with methyl mercury. Migration from fish is inevitable to humans. The illegal gold mining is a $22.5 million a month industry. After the disaster caused by the oil and gas industry in Casanare, another province of Colombia, in 2014, where 20,000 animals and rare species died of thirst for lack of water and pollutants. Can you imagine how much more mercury, methyl arsenic, and who knows whatever more pollutants will be poured to Colombian river sources, waterheads, now with 4 legal mining projects approved, where Canada has, of course, big interests, along with South Africa, Switzerland, and Chile. The candidate for the Green Party in Canada spoke on her campaign about Canada's foreign policy as basic and how Canada is estimated in the world regarding human rights and the influence of their corporations on the environment and peoples in other countries, as a mandatory for the new administration to acknowledge, as the records as deal with the scandal of mining processes in Guatemala where 11 women were raped by security forces which protected the Canadian interests there. Now, in Colombia, with this oil and gas corporation known as Pacific and its human rights and environmental scandals. You should see here Pacific Rubiales documentary on YouTube. Canada It's in its lowest levels. Its rivers are in the lowest levels. They blame the Nino effect on me, but the oil and gas industry and the abuse of water and the destruction of soil and land. Yes, the oil and gas industry has to be replaced by new technologies. As oil has the mother of all wars, poverty, abusive killings, displacement of millions of peoples and now nations, human and natural disasters. The biggest banks of the world and corporations found 10 years ago the other subject of their invasions and miserable behavior, the world's water. This is included in their agendas and foreign policy. We'll speak about this in more detail as we go. This is W Squared, the World's Wealth Project.